You've seen that expressed now in 2 unanimous Security Council resolutions to impose the strictest sanctions ever. All of that designed to bring North Korea to the table for constructive, productive dialogue. If our diplomatic efforts fail, though, our military option will be the only one left.
That's Secretary of State Rex Tillerson stressing today that the U.S. wants to resolve the North Korean threat peacefully, but warning that a military option is available as a last resort. This comes with President Trump set to make his first address at the United Nations Tuesday at the annual General Assembly, gathering of world leaders. There's a lot of speculation over how he'll respond to the regime's provocative actions and what he'll propose, what all he'll say. Jim Walsh is an international security expert at the MIT Security Studies program. Glad to have you with us here today. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Laura.
All right, Jim. So what do you expect we're going to hear from the president in his address when it comes to North Korea? We've heard that he will talk about his America First message, among many other things. But what else should we hear from him during this all-important moment at the UN?
Well, I think it depends on 2 things, really. One is, who does he think the audience is? You know, a lot of these leaders who come into town next week, they get in that room. They're not talking to the other heads of state. They're really talking to the people back home in their domestic audience. And so one of the questions is, will President Trump be speaking really to American voters, or is he trying to send a signal to the international community? And the second thing is, and we just have to be honest here, you know, there's just a certain degree of uncertainty. It sort of depends on what mood he's in. And is he going to sort of be more ad lib or stick to a script? It's not a great match for a speech. It's not his sort of audience. It's not his sort of venue. But I also think the expectations are pretty low. So I don't think there's going to be, you know, much harm that comes of here. And so it's a potential win for him if he comes to that audience and is presidential.
Yeah, you raise a very good point. This is not a loud room, so to speak. It's not that big crowd feel that we know he likes. We've got reports out today about a phone call that the president of South Korea had with President Trump today, agreeing to even stronger pressure through sanctions on North Korea and, you know, the work that they want to do with the international community to implement the latest UN Security Council's resolution. So do you think we'll hear more about that this week, about this, what they talked about in this phone call?
Laura, I think that's the single #1 most important thing. I'm glad you put your finger on that. Why? Because the whole Korean, if Korea is our #1 security challenge, and I think you can have a debate about it, but let's just say it's #1, then the #1 most important country is not China, which is important. It's South Korea, our ally. If a war breaks out, where do they fight it? On South Korean soil. And we have a joint military command. So that is a critical relationship. And we don't have an ambassador in South Korea right now. The U.S. has that seat is empty, except for an acting ambassador. And I think there's been a bit of an up and down relationship between President Moon and President Trump. So I think it's great that he got him on the phone. And I hope when they have lunch, he and the President of Japan are going to be, Prime Minister of Japan are going to be having lunch. That's going to be a critical meeting. And that's really where the real work will get done. It's not going to be in speeches. It's in these meetings with world leaders.
Right. And, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here to bring up different topics in his address on Tuesday. Aside from North Korea, what do you think is the most important thing the president can talk about? He'll obviously talk about a lot of different things. What do you want to hear?
Well, if I got to choose, what I would say is I want to talk about a strong America, but a strong America that works in partnership with other countries, and that we're stronger together than we are alone. And if we all do that, then we all win. America wins, and our partners win. And so if he comes out with that sort of message, strong, but hey, I'm in the UN, we got to work together as allies, I think that'll be a winner.
You know, the president and other world leaders keep this dizzying schedule this week. I was taking a look at it. As we look at what is on the agenda for Mr. Trump, he's got a meeting tomorrow on United Nations reform. He'll meet with the leaders of France and Israel, host a dinner with Latin American leaders. Later in the week, he'll meet with the Emir of Qatar and he'll host a diplomatic reception. So on that list, what stands out to you?
The one that jumps to me, and it'll be a dark horse for a lot of people, is the meeting with Qatar. People say, well, what the heck is Qatar? It's this tiny country in the Middle East. Therefore, because it's in the Middle East, it's super important. And recently, there's been a division within the Gulf states where Saudi Arabia has led a group against Qatar. And Mr. Trump sort of sided with them, it seemed, in certain tweets. But it has to be remembered that that country hosts one of the biggest, most important U.S. military bases in the region. And so, you know, it's bad news if there are all these divisions. I'm hoping that meeting is a signal that suggests that this fight has got to get resolved and that the U.S. can play a constructive role there. But that's the sleeper, if you ask me.
All right. And last question. What do you think happens on Tuesday? Does the president stick to his script?
Well,
that's a tough one. I know. I just wanted to ask you.
I mean, I'm a social scientist. I look at the data. What does the data say?
Okay.
Probably not, but possibly.
All right.
Possibly.
Well, of course, we're all going to be watching. We'll be following it right here on Fox News. We'll be on it all week long. Our friend Eric Shawn, who's sitting next to me, will be at the UN all week. We'll bring you the very latest, and I appreciate your perspective tonight. Thank you, Jim Walsh.
Thank you, Laura.
All right.